Magandang araw sa inyong lahat and welcome once again to another pre-recorded video lecture for the subject NCM 107 or Concepts in Pediatrics. My name is Jeffrey Reboron and I will be your instructor for this video. Last meeting, we talked about Sigmund Freud's psychosexual development theory and we talked about how the libido affects the behavior of a person. We talked about the psychosexual stage and the presence of the sexual needs of an individual in their different life stages, and that this libido interacts with the id, the ego, and the superego of an individual, and that is the reason why children or people act the way that they do. Now we are ready to proceed to our next topic, which is another theory on human behavior, which is the psychosocial development theory by Erik Erikson. In this session, we are going to explore a theory that has profoundly influenced our understanding of human growth and personality development. Erik Erikson's psychosocial development theory is going to be our topic in today's video. This is a must-know for anyone in the nursing field as it provides essential insights into the emotional and social challenges that individuals face throughout their lives. Erik Erikson maps out and identifies 8 distinct stages that span from across infancy to old age. Each of these stages are marked by a central conflict that must be resolved for healthy psychological development. From the developmental task in infancy to the challenges of old age, we will break down each stage to help you understand the theory of psychosocial development better, discuss its significance in the pediatric clients, and highlight how this theory can guide your approach to patient care. So students, prepare yourselves, your handouts, and your ballpens as we study Erik Erikson's psychosocial development theory. Before diving and studying the actual theory, which is the psychosocial development theory, let us first study the proponent of the said theory, and this is Erik Erikson. Erik Erikson trained under Sigmund Freud and he actually studied the psychosexual theory, and then because of that, he founded his own theory called the psychosocial development theory. So what did Erik Erikson do? He was the mentee of Sigmund Freud and he studied the theory presented by his mentor. And Erik Erikson thought that the fact that the libido is actually the reason why people act the way that they do, which is the premise of the psychosexual development theory, does not actually sit with him well. That means that Erik Erikson doesn't buy the idea that a person's behavior is actually dictated by a person's libido. Meaning, hindi naniniwala si Erik Erikson na ang isang tao at yung kanyang mga ugali at ginagawa is dictated by his own sexual gratification. So Erik Erikson said, I will not believe in the psychosexual theory. Instead, I will create my own theory to define and understand why people act the way that they do. And so he came up with his own theory called the psychosocial theory. Now, why did he decide to create another theory in place of the psychosexual theory? Because number one, he doesn't believe that our actions and behaviors can be dictated by libido. Instead, Erik Erikson believed that a person's view of himself is more important than any instinctive drive or libido in determining one's behavior. Naniniwala si Sigmund Freud na kung paano natin tignan ang ating sarili, ito po ang mas mabigat na magdidikta why we act the way that we do. That is the premise of the psychosocial development theory. We look at ourselves and we define our own behaviors and not because of the libido or what we call sexual drive. Now, what is the actual premise of the Erik Erikson psychosocial development theory? Erik Erikson believed that there are 2 conflicting or opposing forces at each stage of the development of an individual. and the resolution of each conflict or accomplishment of a developmental task of that stage will allow the individual to go towards the next stage. Naniniwala si Erik Erikson na hindi po libido ang nagdidikta sa mga behavior or attitude ng isang tao, bagkus ito po yung dalawang opposing forces that fight each other during those different life stages. And when we choose one over the other, that will define who we are in the future. The psychosocial development theory consists of 8 stages that span from infancy to toddlerhood to preschooler, school age, adolescent, early adult, middle adult, and even late adulthood. So we have 8 stages of the psychosocial development theory. According to Erik Erikson, each life stage presents a central crisis that must be resolved for healthy psychological and social development. Erik Erikson believed that in every life stage that we will reach, we will be faced with 2 opposing or conflicting forces. And the job of an individual who is growing and developing is to pick one over the other. And the choices that an individual will make will define who they will become in the future. Naniniwala si Erik Erikson na sa every life stage na pupuntahan natin, we will get to choose between 2 opposing forces, the yin and the yang, the good and the bad, and our choices, yung mga pinili natin, ang siyang magdidikta kung ano ang magiging attitude natin paglaki. For you to better understand the premise of the Erik Erikson psychosocial development theory and the concept of the 2 opposing forces, let me tell you about the story of the 2 wolves that are born alongside us during our birthdays. There is a belief that when we are born, 2 spirit animals are also born with us. And these are your white wolf and the black wolf. Every day, these wolves will fight each other, try to kill each other, and depending on our choices that we do, the black wolf or the white wolf will win over the other. Now, what does this symbolize? There is a belief that inside each of us, there are 2 wolves. One is evil, and it is full of anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, ego, and everything bad in this world. The other wolf is the good wolf. It is full of joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. And every day, in each life stages, these wolves, these conflicting forces, will try to kill each other. And who wins? It's the one you feed most. This is the premise of Erik Erikson's psychosocial development theory, that each developmental stage that we go through, there will be 2 opposing forces that us individuals will have to choose, and that our choices will dictate our attitude and behavior when we grow up. During the infancy period, the infants will be faced with the 2 conflicting forces, and these are your trust versus mistrust. Now, the crisis in this period is dependence on caregivers for the basic needs, because the infants cannot yet fend for themselves or take care of themselves dahil hindi pa nila maalagaan yung kanilang sarili. These infants cannot take care of themselves independently. They have to trust other individuals to do the caring for them. Now, when a child's needs are met and their discomforts are removed quickly, or if the kid is cuddled when he is stressed or crying, this child, this infant is played with or talked to, the child develops the sense of trust. Because of that, there is a successful resolution of the infancy stage, and the child develops trust in the world and other people. But if the opposite happens, when the care given to the infant is inconsistent, or the care given to the crying child is inadequate, or it is rejecting, the child will develop a sense of mistrust. And because of that, the child may have fixation and he will develop mistrust. He will not be able to trust other people that easily. He will be full of fear because he is paranoid that he cannot trust other people, and he will be suspicious of others. So what is our nursing implication? What does that tell us as nurses? We have to remember that as nurses, we have to provide a primary caregiver to our patients. We have to teach the mother how to properly care or rear the child. We have to teach the mother on how to properly give attention and love to the child growing up, because these will develop a sense of trust in our patients. We have to encourage the mother to provide soft touch sounds that are soothing to the baby, and also provide visual stimulation and involvement to the infant so that he will develop a sense of trust. In the event that the mother, who is the primary care provider, dies, we should also make sure that someone from their family will stand as the primary caregiver to the child, so that he will have someone to trust and that he will be able to successfully resolve the conflicts of infancy. Ang ibig sabihin niyan, kapag namatay po yung nanay ng isang bata, kapag siya ay nanganak, kunwari, we have to find another individual who will be the primary caregiver of the child, so that he will be able to develop trust. So that is infancy. The main conflicting forces in this stage is trust versus mistrust. We now go to the second stage of the Erik Erikson psychosocial development theory, and this is toddlerhood. And for toddlers, they are faced with two conflicting forces, which are your autonomy and your shame and doubt. The main crisis in this toddlerhood stage is for the toddlers to develop a sense of personal control over physical skills and a sense of independence. You have to acknowledge the fact that throughout their infancy, these children, these infants, were solely dependent on their parents for their basic needs. During toddlerhood, these kids or these toddlers will have to learn autonomy or independence, so that they will be able to successfully resolve the crisis or the conflict of toddlerhood. Now, when we speak of autonomy, it also means self-government or independence. We also have the term negativism or negativistic behavior that often occurs during toddlerhood. And when we speak of negativism, the child always answers no, because this is a defense mechanism that is used by toddlers in pursuit for independence, because they no longer want you to be dictating or controlling them. And the easiest answer for them is to say no. If you ask the child, do you want to eat? No. Do you want to watch TV? No. Because basically, you are telling them how helpless they are, how dependent they are to you, that you have to dictate every action that they have to take. So that is a normal reaction to the child when they are dictated, because they do not feel that they are already in control of their actions and decisions. So negativism, or always saying no, a negativistic behavior seen in toddlerhood, is a sign that this child is already starting to assert their independence. They want to be independent. They want to be given a chance to control or decide for themselves. However, because of lack of vocabulary, dahil konti pa lang yung mga kaya nilang sabihin, because they still lack the words and the communication skills to tell you that what they want is autonomy and independence, the easiest way for them to stop you from dictating them of what to do is to say no. And that is the reason why negativism is a normal occurrence during toddlerhood. Now, when the parents appreciate the things that a toddler does, like for example, opening a candy wrapper on their own. Look, mommy, I opened my own candy wrapper. Or they flushed the toilet and they said, mommy, I already flushed the toilet on my own without your help. and other things that they do on their own, the child will start to develop a sense of independence and autonomy. And that will lead to the successful resolution of the conflicts of toddlerhood, which is autonomy versus shame and doubt. And when the child successfully resolves this conflict, he will have autonomy, he will become autonomous, he will have a sense of independence, and he will definitely have a sense of self-confidence. But if the other thing occurs, if the parents are impatient or they do everything for their children, they do not trust that their kid has the ability to do things on their own, or the children, the toddlers, are not allowed to do what they want to do, they start to doubt their capabilities and develop shame. Why is my mommy doing everything for me? Do I not possess the skills? So the child will develop shame and self-doubt. And because of that, the child will develop fixation, leading to shame, doubt, lack of self-esteem, and dependency on others. What is our nursing implication in this toddlerhood stage? We should involve our toddlers in decision-making because that is one way for them to develop a sense of independence or autonomy. And when we speak of offering the child to be involved in decision-making, you have to give them choices. Do not give them close-ended questions that are answerable by a yes or a no, because they will automatically say no if you ask questions that are close-ended. Instead, you have to give them choices or questions that are not answerable by a yes or a no. Example, you want the child to dress himself. You will say, "Baby, what would you want to wear? This blue shirt or this red shirt?" The child will not be able to answer no because your question is not answerable by a yes or a no, and that you are already offering choices. So the child will be forced to choose, and he will have to stick with his choices. And because of that, he will start to develop a sense of autonomy. Aside from that, you also have to praise the activity of children when they try to do things on their own. If they say they're already able to feed themselves on their own, if they say that they can already put their shoes by themselves on their own, or they can already button their shirts, even if these things are just simple tasks for us adults, you have to praise the ability of the child because he is doing things independently. And that is also how you develop a sense of autonomy in your toddlers. Aside from that, you should not judge the correctness of one's decision. If a child, for example, says, "I want to wear this red shirt," and you do not like the red shirt that he chose, but that is the choice he's sticking to, you don't have to question his decisions and say, "Your choices suck." Don't do that. Because this child will develop shame or they will doubt their own choices. Instead, you have to praise the choices that the child makes. That is how you help the child resolve the conflicts of toddlerhood, which is autonomy versus shame or doubt. After resolving the conflicts of toddlerhood, the child will have to enter the preschool period, wherein he will again be faced with two conflicting forces, which are your initiative versus guilt. The main crisis in this stage of preschool is initiating activities and asserting control through social interactions and play. Now, when we speak of initiative, learning initiative is learning how to do new things. That is initiative. When a child is given freedom to initiate motor play, "Mommy, I want to play outside," the child is given the authority or the freedom to go out and play, or they are exposed to play materials like clay or finger painting. Their imagination and creativity are allowed to blossom and bloom. Or if their questions are answered, when they ask you questions, they are answered by the adults. Or they are allowed to fantasize and imagine things. The child will learn a sense of initiative. And because of that, there will be a successful resolution of the preschool conflict, and that the child will develop initiative and leadership abilities. But when a child is made to feel like play activities are bad, Mommy, I want to go out. No, stay inside. The child is not allowed to play, and play is made to feel, the child is made to feel that playing games is a bad choice. Or for example, his questions are made to feel that they are stupid. Mommy, why are you using oil when you fry? Shut up, you're very stupid when asking those questions. You look stupid, you sound stupid when you are asking those questions. If the child feels that way, he may develop a sense of guilt, and he may say, am I doing bad things for asking questions? Am I doing bad things for playing? Am I a bad boy? Because of that, the child will feel bad for himself. He will develop a sense of guilt, and he will become fixated. And because of that, he will have fixations leading to guilt, self-doubt, and even inhibition. So that is the reason why these children will develop a sense of inferiority. So what is the implication of this? You always have to tell the parents of a preschooler to allow these kids to play. Always remember that play is universal in the life of the child, and it is necessary not just for motor and physical skills, but also for soft skills, communication skills, and learning core values and character development. Okay? Aside from that, when you allow the child to play, and when you allow the child to fantasize and interact with other people and do things that enhance their communication and motor skills, so you allow the child to play, always remember to provide safety, because preschoolers are prone to having playground accidents and other things like that. So you also have to always supervise and provide safety for these children, and also learn to set limitations. So when a child asks you, Mommy, I want to go outside and play, you say, okay, you go out and play, but after 20 minutes, you come back inside because we will have our breakfast. So that is how you set limitations, but still allowing these children to play and develop initiative over guilt. After the preschool period, the child will now enter the school age, and he will be forced with two conflicting forces, which are your industry versus your inferiority. The crisis during the school age period is coping with new social and academic demands, because these children will be faced with so many challenges in their social and academic lives, that the crisis in this stage is centered on these things. Now, after learning how to do new things, which is initiative, children are now tasked to do things well, which is what we call industriousness, or a sense of industry. If a child's works are praised or rewarded, look, Mom, I washed the dishes. Look, Mom, I had a perfect score in my quiz in math. So the child is given reward or praises. Wow, baby, you're very good. Okay, manang-mana ka talaga sa akin. If the child hears those words, or their achievements are acknowledged by their parents, the child says that he is a top 5 in their class or top 1 in their class, and the parents go to the classroom during the recognition period of these kids, the child will have a sense of pride. The child will have a sense of happiness that the parents are proud of him. They develop a sense of pride, and their sense of industry grows because they feel pride. They feel proud of their achievements. They will strive to do better and better, and so their sense of industry grows because of that. That is the successful resolution of the conflict of industry versus inferiority in the school age period, and that will lead to a sense of competence and achievement. The child will become a go-getter, a very successful and excellent child in the future if he chooses industry versus inferiority. So it is important for parents and teachers to give praise or reward to these children and acknowledge and recognize their achievements, and also praise the hard work that being put forward by these school agers. But if the opposite happens, when a child's works are ignored, Mommy, look, I have 10 points. I perfected my quiz in math. Mommy, I have 10 over 10 in science. What are those? Those are pointless papers, if the parents would say that. Or the efforts of the child are not seen. Mommy, look, I cleaned my room. So what? I don't care if that's what the parents will say. Or the products are fruit of busy work. The child is, for example, playing the guitar and he's already able to sing songs on the guitar, and the parents would say, can you stop doing that? Instead of playing the guitar and doing nonsense things, why don't you just help your father in the farm? So the child's work or the child's achievements are considered a fruit of busy work. These children will develop a sense of inferiority. So they will become fixated and they will have feelings of inferiority. They feel that they cannot do things right. They cannot do things well. All of the things that they are doing are wrong. They will feel inadequate and they will feel like a total failure. That is what happens when the child chooses inferiority over industry. Now, what does that imply? We have to teach the parents of school-agers to give rewards to the achievements and the activities of the school-ager. And rewards doesn't have to be monetary or material in nature. Just by simply patting the back of the child, ruffling their heads, or saying, good job, baby, I'm so proud of you. Those are enough rewards already for these children to develop a sense of industry. You also have to remember to allow these children, these schoolers, to participate in household chores so that their sense of industry will grow. They will be able to develop their skills in cooking, in tending to the house chores, if you allow them to participate in household works. You also have to let the child assemble a small project so that the child will feel rewarded. Like, for example, give them puzzles that they can complete, or give them simple tasks or simple responsibilities, like, for example, saving up for the future, that they will feel rewarded after the achievement of those tasks. Those are the things that you need to remember for the development of industry over inferiority for school-age individuals. After the resolution of the conflicts of the school-age period, the child will now have to enter the adolescent period. And the two opposing forces, or the psychosocial stages of the adolescents, is identity versus role confusion. And the main crisis for this stage is for the adolescent to develop a personal identity and a sense of self. Most adolescents do not really know who they really are, and they are at a loss when you ask them who they are as individuals. And that is the reason why it is very difficult for adolescents to identify who they are. It's very difficult for them to create a sense of self-image, because that is the main crisis in this stage. Now, the adolescent should integrate everything that they have learned in the past to form a self-image. So what will the adolescent do? He will look back at his life during the infancy, toddlerhood, preschooler, and school-age period. He will look at the things that he has accomplished, the conflicting forces that he has chosen, the choices that he has made in the past. He will have to integrate that in his own self, in his own being, to form a sense of self-image. Ang ibig sabihin nito, yung adolescent natin, he will try to look at the past happenstances in his life, and he will try to integrate everything that he has learned in the past to create a self-image, to define who he truly is. Now, if the adolescent is able to integrate all the learnings that he has done in the past, and he can properly define who he is or who she is, he attains a sense of identity. And that will lead to the successful resolution of the adolescent period, and the child will have a strong sense of identity and a sense of direction. But if the adolescent is unable to do so, he cannot integrate the things that he has learned in the past, or when he looks at himself in the mirror, his definition of who he is still vague or unclear, and he becomes unsure of himself, that leads to identity crisis and even role confusion. These children, these adolescents, become uncertain of what they can do and what they are and who they want to be, and that the roles are already muddied or unclear. That now leads to what we call identity crisis. So the child will become fixated. He will have role confusion. He will have a weak sense of self, and he will suffer from identity crisis. Now, what is the implication for that? For us nurses, we have to avoid giving negative identity, especially to people without any definite identity. For example, a person has no self-image. He has not yet integrated the things that he has learned in the past. He was not able to create a self-image, meaning he has no personality or he has no identity. You have to avoid giving negative identity to them. If a child says, I don't know who I am, don't say, I know who you are. You're gay. You're gay. If you say that to a child with an absent self-image or no self-image, he will take the negative identity you gave them and make them their own. Okay? So the child may prefer that negative identity you offered them rather than not having an identity at all. So the child will assimilate or take what you said and make them your own. And he will say, oh, okay, it is better for me to be gay, like what you said, instead of not having an identity or image after all. So what do? You have to give these adolescents who have no self-image the opportunity to discuss their emotions and events that are important in their lives. If a person says, I don't know what to take in college, or I don't know where I'm headed, or I don't know what I want to become, or I don't know who I am, you have to ask them the right questions so that they will reflect on themselves and that their answer will come from them. Okay? So a good question to ask them is, what are the things that you think are important to you? What are the happenstances that occurred in the past that have greatly influenced who you are right now? So those are the questions that you need to ask them to force them to reflect so that they will find their direction. They will find their self-image because of the questions that you pose. You also have to offer support and praise to these adolescents for the decisions that they do when they are already creating their self-image. After resolving the conflicts of adolescent, and if the adolescent is already able to create his self-image and he is no longer confused about who he really is, he will now have to enter the stage of young adulthood. And for young adults, these refer to individuals aged 18 up to 40 years old. And the conflicting forces of this stage is your intimacy versus isolation. The main crisis for the young adults is to form an intimate and loving relationship with other individuals. And it has always been said that it is easier for a person to love others if he already loves himself. I'm sorry for that. Mabilis or madali magmahal ng ibang tao kapag alam mong mahalin ang sarili mo. And the only way that you can truly love yourself is if you are able to accept who you really are. So self-image is the precursor to intimacy because you cannot have strong relationships with other people if you do not have a strong relationship with yourself. You cannot understand other people if you do not understand yourself first. That is the premise of intimacy versus isolation. You have to remember that intimacy is the ability to relate well with the others to attain long-lasting friendships. And if a person has a strong sense of identity, a person has his own self-image, he knows who he is, He loves himself despite of and in spite of, he is able to create a deeper friendship with another individual or another person. And because he has a strong sense of identity, he also is able to commit to relationships. Therefore, he is able to have intimacy. Now, that leads to the successful resolution of the conflicts of young adulthood. And when there is resolution of intimacy versus isolation, the person will have strong relationships and emotional intimacy with other individuals. But if a person has role confusion, he cannot build a lasting relationship because of the constant fear of rejection. And in the end, this person who has role confusion, who has no self-image, will in the end fail to love and become isolated. And there will be loneliness and fear of commitment because this person is not in deeply rooted and strong relationships with other people. That person will grow up to be alone and desolate and sad because they fear commitment, because they fear rejection, because they have not yet accepted who they are. Always remember that identity is the precursor to intimacy. And a person cannot love other people if they do not love themselves. A person cannot love others if they cannot understand themselves. That is the premise of intimacy versus isolation. Now, what is the nursing implication for this? You have to provide an avenue for these young adults who are isolated to verbalize their feelings. You have to make them feel that they belong. So how do you counteract isolation or the feeling of loneliness? Make sure to endorse these isolated young adults to groups which may help them to create lasting friendships. For example, you have a tita or an uncle who is not yet married, an unmarried uncle with no girlfriends or no prospects of marrying. Yung uncle nyo or tita nyo, walang nagmamahal sa kanya except the family. So what do? You have to find groups wherein this aunt or uncle of yours can join so that they can meet new people and feel a sense of belongingness. So if I were to have an aunt or an uncle who is isolated, I can endorse them to clubs or groups. For example, Singles for Christ or Badminton Association or reading clubs of Ilocos Sur. So those are the things that I can do so that I can counteract the effects of isolation and sadness. If my tito or that young adult cannot create lasting relationship with an individual, then I can perhaps pave the way for them to find a group who will accept them for who they are. So those are the things that we can do to help these young adults form a sense of intimacy versus isolation. The next thing that we are going to discuss is the middle adults. And middle adults are from the ages 40 to 65. These are your parents. 40 to 65 usually fall under the bracket of our parents. Now, the main conflicting forces during this stage is generativity versus stagnation. And when we speak of generativity and versus stagnation, the main crisis during this stage is contributing to the society and supporting the next generation. During this stage, the middle adult is responsible now to nation building, to participate in nation building. They have to also open their arms to serving the community and contributing to the society in whichever way they can. Now you have to remember that concern grows not just for themselves, but to their families and the community and even the world. That is what we call a sense of generativity. If a person, a middle adult, is able to assume different roles or various roles in the society, they regain their self-worth and they become generative. That means they become productive, they become involved in nation building, or they become active and they have a feeling that is renewed. Okay? They feel alive again when they see another purpose or another layer in their purpose in this world. But if a person assumes only one role, they may find themselves unable to cope up with change, and in time, they will become stagnant. So they become full-time mothers. They only have one role, which is to be a mother. Life becomes boring for them, and they become antiquated. So you have to remember that during your middle adults, your parents will start to think about ways and means to help the society. The parents will start to run for public office. They will become barangay officials. They will run for tanod or RIC, or they will also become barangay kagawads. Those are example of generativity. Why? Because your parents are not just mere parents. They are also contributors to the society, contributors to nation building. Now, what is the implication for this? You have to counsel these middle adults regarding community involvement. If a person is already burnt out in their current status, they say that they're tired of being a housewife, they're tired of being a mom, they're tired of taking care of the family. You can give them opportunities, or you can suggest opportunities for them to be generative. You can say, if you're bored of being a wife, how about starting your own business at the age of 40? 40 is not yet too late for you to become an entrepreneur. Or, for example, a mother says that she is already tired of taking care of her husband. You can say, how about you find another hobby wherein you may feel relaxed and also feel renewed? Have you tried playing the guitar or learning how to play the piano? Those are what we call generativity. Or you can tell them, what if you go to the church and serve as an acolyte, or you serve as a lector during Sunday Mass? Those are new roles for them to assume so that they will become generative and not stagnant. You also have to let them verbalize their fears of being stagnant, and you have to say, I understand how you feel. Would you like to talk about it? And you have to let them verbalize their emotions, because that is one way for us nurses to offer emotional support to our patients. If the individual already reaches their sunset years, we call them old agers. And these are individuals who are 65 years old and above. Now, the main conflicting forces during this stage is what we call integrity versus despair. And the main crisis during this stage is reflecting on their life and accepting its course and what happened during their lifespan. Now, if a person, an old ager, is able to look back at life and appreciate the choices that they have made in the past, and they are happy for what is happening in their present life, they have a sense of integrity. Naku, yung lola mo, sabi niya, mabuti na lang at nakipagtanan ako sa aking asawa, at dahil sa mga desisyon ko sa buhay, nakipagtanan ako kahit man ganun ang nangyari, nabiyayaan kami ng maraming anak na nakatulong sa aming magpundar, at ngayon masaya ang aming pamilya. If the old ager or the senior citizen is happy for what is happening in the choices that they have made in their lives, and they do not wish life to be relived all over again, they have no regrets in the choices that they have made in the past, they have a sense of integrity. Okay? And they also have a sense of fulfillment, and they also develop a sense of self-actualization. But if an old ager wishes life to be relived all over again, I wish my life could be relived. I wish I could turn back time so that I will change the choices that I have made over the past. Okay? They look back at their life with so much regret and sadness. They may have difficulty accepting what is happening in the present, and in the end, they will become despaired. And because of that, they will develop regret, despair, and bitterness about life. So that becomes our old-aged individuals. They will either have integrity or they will have despair. And that ends our video lecture for this meeting about the psychosocial development theory by Erik Erikson. I hope and pray that you learned something from me today, and I also hope and pray that you enjoyed our lesson. Again, this is NCM 107 Concepts in Pediatrics, and this has been Jeffrey Reboron, your instructor. Have a great day, everyone.